Everybody, and welcome back to Trudge, a journey to being recovered. My name is Dexter. I am a recovered drug addict alcoholic. Welcome back to the program. Last week we finished up with the first part of the chapter, How It Works, going through the clear-cut directions, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, on the journey to having you be a recovered drug addict alcoholic, or whatever you are, having the obsession to do these things, drink, drug, whatever it may be in your life, removed. So we have a lot to do. How It Works is a long chapter, and so I don't want to waste too much time. I want to actually get right to the work. So it just so happens that we open our book study every week with the third step prayer, and last week we ended right on that. It's going to be on page 63, so we're going to kill two birds with one stone and read this paragraph and say the prayer at the same time, invite God in, so we can get started to working through step 3 and then moving on to step 4. We're going to get into a lot of step 4 today, so we're starting to pick up a little bit of steam here with the program. And you know, guys, before you know it, we're going to be done with these 12 steps, and then it's your opportunity to put into practical application and to live it. My life has become a lot better since I've done that and decided to just not drink or drug. So on page 63, for those of you who have been with me from day one and understand the color scheme of the highlighters, you know, pink is for prayers, and this is highlighted pink on page 63. This is the third step prayer. And back on page 63 it says we were now at step 3. We read the third step promises prior to that. Let's take a second, invite God in, and say this prayer. Follow along if you need to. If you have it committed to memory, even better. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. That's all highlighted pink. The words "as we understood Him" are in italics. I also have those underlined. It's very, very important to understand that this conception of your God is of your own making. You know, this is not, we're not piggybacking somebody else's experience. We're having our own. And the last word of the prayer, the word always. You know, this is something that we're asking God to do for us always. May I always do what your will for me is, you know, and it took me a long time to be able to discern what that is, but I most definitely always know what it isn't. And, you know, it's not to do the things that I used to do that, you know, brought me to my knees, that brought me to the point of being here, so desperate in the rooms, as desperate as I was outside of the rooms, you know, getting ready to relapse, you know, embezzling, you know, infidelity, cheating, lying, stealing. Those things aren't God's will for me, you know, so may I do Thy will always. Always is circled. It goes on to say, friends, we thought well before taking this step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last abandon ourselves utterly to Him. That's very important, you know. If you're not ready to go through with this, don't. You know, it's not gonna work for you. You have to be entirely ready, you know, willing to go to any lengths, you know, abandoning yourself to this newfound power. Okay, the word utterly is circled. That's one of those buzzwords, you know, utterly, completely, totally. All right. The next sentence is going to be highlighted orange, okay? It says, we found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person, okay? I believe that person should be your sponsor. Okay, now, it's important to remember that, you know, when this book was written in the late 1930s, things are a lot different, you know, then than they are now. It goes on to say, such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. You know, I know that this worked for me as well as it did because I had somebody that could relate to what I was going through, that had gone through what I was going through, that had done it. And that person was my sponsor. You know, it's strongly suggested that that be your person, but as the book is telling you, it doesn't have to be. Okay? The next sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, but it is better to meet God alone than with one who might misunderstand. So important. So important. You want somebody to work with that understands what it is you're trying to do. 9 out of 10 times, it really helps if this is something that that person has done with their sponsor, and so on and so forth. Someone that hasn't had any 12-step experience, that hasn't worked and lived the 12 steps, they can't teach you how to do it. You know, so it only makes sense. You know, you want to learn how to drive stick, you're going to go to someone who drives a stick or has a lot of experience in driving a stick shift. You want to learn how to change a flat tire, you want to go to somebody who can change a flat tire, you know. it sounds like common sense, but more times than not, many of us are reaching to help places where people don't know how to help us in this capacity. It's important that you want that person to know what it is that they're talking about. Just like it falls under the 8 conditions that we talked about in the chapter There Is a Solution. Make sure these people have those conditions, and that you're going to get what it is the book is talking to you that you're looking to get fulfilled with. Okay. The wording was, of course, quite optional so long as we express the idea, voicing it without reservation. The next sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, this was only a beginning, though, if honestly, and I have the words if and honestly, there's that word honest, it just keeps popping up, if honestly, and humbly, the word humbly is going to be circled again. Humility, vital part of the 12-step process. If honestly and humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Okay, remember, it doesn't take years for this to go down like some people may think it does. You may be hearing in meetings that it does. Bill Wilson, he started to feel his spiritual experience. He's working on his 9th step in Towns Hospital. Bill Dotson, within 3 days of being 12-step by Bill and Bob, he started to feel something different too. All it takes is to make that beginning. Next, we launched out on a course of vigorous action. The word vigorous circled. It's one of those buzzwords, they're really conveying to you that they want you to get after it here. Okay, we don't want you to be pussyfooting around and hemming and hawing with this work. Chase this, this spiritual awakening like you used to chase your flavor, your drug of choice, whatever that was. Go after it. Really want it. The first step of which is a personal house cleaning. I have the words personal house cleaning underlined. And that's step 4, guys. I've written step 4 into that. So now we're moving through step 3 into step 4. We've conceded to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics or drug addicts or whatever we were. We made the admission to ourselves that God was either everything or he was nothing. We made the decision to turn our will and our lives over to that, to that power. And here we are with this personal house cleaning, step 4, this fact-finding inventory, which many of us had never attempted. Okay, now it's very important, the first 3 steps. They give you that foundation with a power greater than yourself. Now we're moving into the realm of having that relationship with ourselves. First we're getting right with God, now we're getting right with ourselves. Okay, vital and crucial is that 3rd step, because that power, like it says in POYVIP, that's what we're looking for. That's what we need. That's what we're going to predicate everything on moving forward. It's not going to be about just not drinking. It's about all our affairs and having God's will done in all of them. Moving through step 4, okay? This next paragraph is all going to be highlighted orange. It says, though our decision was a vital and crucial step, and vital and crucial are both circled. That you hear those words when you talk about something important, like intensive care. Vital. The life and blood, crucial, like absolutely has to happen. Okay. It could have little permanent effect, and the word permanent is going to be underlined. We want this thing to stick. Don't be fooled. There is such a thing as permanent recovery. This is something, it's recovered. The obsession to go away. You want this to work, okay? Unless at once, right away, the words at once are circled, followed by strenuous effort. There's another buzzword, strenuous, heavy lifting, doing the digging, not standing around and watching, waiting for someone else to do it for you, but actually getting your hands dirty. Strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Okay? Our liquor was but a symptom. I have but a symptom underlined. This is all still orange. So we had to get down to causes and conditions. Causes and conditions is underlined as well. That whole thing highlighted orange, and the last part, causes and conditions, underlined. So we're here to take stock of what our problems are. Now, obviously, we know what our problems are. We come in, we can't stop drinking, but we've learned a little bit about ourselves and the doctor's opinion, and now we're going to do what's called a fact-finding inventory. Step 4 has, in my estimation, gotten a bad rap. You hear people talk about it as if it's this plague, this thing that's so scary. And mind you, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's easy if you're prepared to do it. And that's what the first 3 steps do. They give you the preparation, they give you the willingness, the desire to continue to go on, to grow, to want to be more than just recovering, more than just abstinent and devoid. It wants you to do this work and so you can be recovered. Okay, this is not a confession. This is not sitting with somebody telling them all your sins. We're trying to find out the things about you that don't serve you well anymore. So in steps 5, 6, 7, and 8, we can tie them all in together. This is the work. Okay, so to this point, I'm sitting in front of you guys, yelling out a bunch of stuff. You're highlighting, you're circling. Now we're going to move into the realm of you're going to do some work. And this is where having a sponsor or a trusted friend is very important, because that's who's going to do the step 5 with you. I did mine with my sponsor. Obviously, you guys aren't going to do it with me. So that's going to be a vital part. This is going to be about the time where you're going to want to have a writing utensil and a notebook. A lot of writing is going to be taking place, and I'll get to that later in this chapter or maybe next week. But let's talk a little bit about what step 4 entails. Okay, so therefore we started upon a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. Let's circle fact-finding and fact-facing. We're starting to now. We're going to look at the things that make us tick, and attempt to rid us of these things with the power that we've now acquired, this newfound power, when we get to step 6 and 7. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is to disclose damaged or unsaleable goods, to get rid of them, promptly. The word promptly, right away. Okay, we're not holding on to this stuff anymore, and without regret circled. I'm not regretful of the fact that some of my worst hang-ups and character defects have been taken away from me. I wanted them gone. I don't want to struggle anymore in or out of the rooms. I want to be happy, and they had to go. If the owner of a business is to be successful, he can't fool himself about values. We did exactly. The word exactly is underlined. Exactly means exactly. The same thing with our lives. Okay? We took stock honestly. Honestly is going to be circled or underlined. There it is again. This word has popped up so much in the last couple pages that it's almost inconceivable, to think that they're like oversaturating us with this understanding that if we're not honest, we're in big trouble. Okay? First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. The next sentence is going to be underlined. It says, being convinced, and I have the word convinced circled. It's not talking about convincing anyone else. It's about you being convinced, okay? That self, manifested in various ways, was what had defeated us. So we could tie that into selfish and self-centeredness is the root of our troubles, which it is. It's just telling you, any life run on self-will is going to be an epic failure. All the things that came to my way that were awful were things that I manifested in myself. Okay? We consider its common manifestations. The next paragraph is important, very important. It's going to be highlighted orange. It says, resentment is the number one offender. It kills or it destroys more alcoholics than anything else. It's hard to believe that resentment would be what destroys more alcoholics. A lot of people would think alcohol destroys most alcoholics, but what's behind the drinking? From it stem all forms of spiritual disease. Remember, this is a spiritual sickness. For we have not only been mentally and physically ill, I have mentally and physically ill underlined, and just sprinkling a little of the doctor's opinion in there for you to let you be reminded it's mind and body illness. We have been spiritually sick, okay? Not having that power greater than ourselves as being part of our program, okay? Devoid of that power, leaving it to our devices to try to fix what was wrong with us, knowing that we were probably placed beyond human aid. This last sentence is going to be underlined, and it's continuing on highlighted orange. It says, when the spiritual malady is overcome, we straighten out mentally and physically. So we talked about the spiritual malady. We referenced from page 52. It was the first point of interest that we talked about, not being able to make a living, being, depressed. These are the things that when these things are overcome, we not only straighten out physically, we straighten out mentally as well. There's going to come a time where we're able to trust our own thinking. Okay, that's very important. Spiritual malady, that's something that every one of you should know by now. It's the first thing we've talked about, and it's one of the working components of this disease is that malady that we carry around with us. Okay, we're a fear to depression. Let's go check it out. Let's go over it again. It can't hurt to talk about this. Full of fear, page 52, we were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of any real help to other people. We're having trouble with our personal relationships. These things straighten out as the result of continuing to work these steps. When we do that, this is overcome and we get well. Okay, we recovered. Not recovering. Recovering insinuates that we never get well. If I fall and break my arm, I don't want to be recovering from it forever. People who have cancer, who are doing chemotherapy, they want that in remission. They want to be recovered. This is no different. Okay, we want to get well, and we want to get well now. Okay, the next paragraph through the next page. These are fourth step actions. Okay, most important parts of the program is the green part. Okay, actions. Without actions, there's no results. Four-step actions. And dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So now we're talking about what it is that we're doing here with this fourth step. Now, mind you, there's a million different ways to do a fourth step. You go online, you Google fourth step, formats, a trillion of them are going to come up. Okay? I'm going to show you how I was taught with mine. We're going to do the one that's in the book. We're going to read that one, and then probably next week, I will go over how I was shown to do mine. There's not one that's better than the other. The goal is we're looking to find the facts. Now, whatever is going to get you to finding the facts and you feel comfortable doing, do that. But I will go through with you guys in depth some of the ones that I did. And it's the hopes that you have a sponsor, it really is, or a trusted friend that you could sit down and do these with. It always helps having somebody who's done this before you, who can understand what it is you're doing. I cannot stress that enough. If you do not have a sponsor to this point, actively look for one, and look for somebody who has come before you and done this work. If you just want sobriety, look for someone who just has got a lot of time. But if you want recovery, and there is a difference, you're looking for somebody who can walk you through this the way I'm kind of walking you through this. Obviously, a million of you are out there watching, 100 of you who are out there watching, 10 of you, I don't even know. I can't sponsor you all. This is just kind of the guide to do that. So it's understood that by this time you have a sponsor, okay? So in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. We asked ourselves why we were angry. In most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, pocketbooks, our ambitions, or personal relationships, including sex. I have including sex circled because that was troublesome for me. And I think it's troublesome for a lot of people. Just a lot of people aren't willing to admit it. So I circle that. There's a reason why it's in there. Bill W. Sounds like he might have had some issues with it as well. We're hurt or threatened, so we were sore. We were burned up. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? Okay, so now while this book talks about alcohol, it talks about some other things too. Sex is definitely one of them. Personal relationships, self-esteem, there's one of them. Security, ambitions. This is a design for living. I can't take it when I hear people say this is just about alcohol. Sure, the single-minded focus of it is, combating alcoholism and finding the solution for that. But boy, it goes so much deeper than what's on the bar. What's under the bar is all this stuff, and this is how you get well. So this is an example that the book uses for a fourth step. We were usually as definite as this example. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown, the cause. His attention to my wife, told my wife of my mistress. Brown may get the job at the office. Affects my sex relation, self-esteem, security, self-esteem, as we go on and on and on. Let's do one more. Mrs. Jones. She's a nut. She snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking. He's my friend. She's a gossip. It affects my. Now, I'm not too big on this particular example that they have here. Next week, I'm going to go in depth how it was shown to me, and it's absolutely amazing. It's pretty masterful to see after you get the hang of doing a couple of these, what it is that the book is asking you to do, and what you find out about yourself. A lot of this stuff I knew already, but I found out some things about myself that I didn't know, and that were keeping me sick, that I was able to put on a character defect list in step 6 and have removed, and continue to work on having, being, okay or content with patient improvement through doing this work, and steps 4 through 9 is like one big step. You know, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We do them like that. They just piggyback each other, and it's really that's the core of the work. I mean, after getting right with God, the work we do on ourselves, it's all there. You know, by the time we get to 10, 11, and 12, a lot of this stuff that we've been doing for the last couple weeks, months, or however long it's been. Okay, let's go to the bottom of the page, please. We went back through our lives. Nothing counted but thoroughness and honesty. Thoroughness circled, honesty circled. There's that word honesty again. Boy, this is this work's got to be a struggle for people who are not honest. I know it was a struggle for me at first, but I got to a point where now I can tell the truth up to myself, about myself, so I can do it with others. It wasn't easy though. I prayed for a lot of willingness around that piece. When we were finished, we considered it carefully. The first thing apparent was that this world and its people were often quite wrong. To conclude that others were wrong was as far as most of us ever got. The usual outcome was that people continued to wrong us and we stayed sore. Sometimes it was remorse, and then we were sore at ourselves. The more we fought and tried to have our own way, the worse matters got. As in war, the victor only seemed to win. The word seemed is going to be circled. It's almost like an illusion that we're winning some kind of battle, okay? Our moments of triumph were short-lived, and they wore, okay? This next sentence is going to be highlighted orange and underlined. Very, very important. It says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness. You'll hear a lot of times in meetings that resentment's like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It absolutely serves no purpose holding on to resentments unless there's action to rectify them behind them. They're the number one offender for a reason. To the precise extent that we permit these resentments, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? I can't tell you how long I've spent burnt up about something someone did to me or how I felt about something someone said. I mean, just wasting hours away when I could have been living life, They probably weren't burnt up about it, but I surely was. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, the business of resentment is infinitely grave. Infinitely grave. That's heavy duty, okay? So, that's going to be underlined, and that's the first example that they're going to talk about how resentments can end up equaling death. Okay, so infinitely grave. I have a little 1 on top of that. We found that it is fatal. Fatal. Fatal death. Fatal. Fatality. That word's underlined. I have another little number 2 on top of the word fatal. Okay? For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the Spirit, which is just another way of saying God. The book likes to talk about the God of their understanding, Bill W.'s understanding in that, in that capacity. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. I have to drink is to die, underlined with a 3 on top of it. Okay, so it tells us that by holding these resentments, we shut ourselves off from God, and then that insanity of that substance, it returns. You turn your back away from your higher power, you stop wanting to be recovered from continuing to live the steps and do the work, help others. It's just a matter of time before you go back. And it says, to drink is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for the alcoholic, these things are poison. Poison is underlined. Okay, resentments are poison. Even justified resentments are poison. Okay, I have a number 4 on top of the word poison. So we've seen 4 now, little illustrations of how resentments hurt us. We turn back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. The word entirely is circled. Okay, we're opening our minds to look at it some kind of different way. I mean, I've done plenty of 4 steps before, but it wasn't until I was taught what I was looking for this way and understood it's not some kind of confession, some kind of, throwing up of all my sins to another person or putting it down on paper, but an actual fact-finding inventory. Did I really even get anywhere, okay? We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others fancied, or real, had the power to actually kill. Kill, underlined with a 5. 5 illustrations, 5 words, 5 little snippets that they put in there to explain to you within just a couple sentences how important it is to not harbor resentments. They're deadly. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered. The word must is always circled. The word mastered, circled. We're not just going to do this exercise. We're going to master it. Okay? But how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol. This was our course. We're going to highlight this next sentence, orange. It says, we realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. That's highlighted orange. Though we did not like their symptoms and the way they disturbed us, like ourselves, we were sick too. Okay, a lot of times I've come to understand things I see in people that bug the hell out of me are things that I do. You know, I have an issue with you. I need to take a look at myself. You know, people are mirrors. You know, what is it about that person that bothers me so much? You know, because I do that same stuff. You know, 4-step really helped me see that. The next sentence is our more 4-step actions, okay? More work. This is going to be highlighted green. We ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. You know, I have a friend who's just been diagnosed with stage 2 cancer, and he may make it, he may not. I would never, you know, treat him poorly. Why would I ever treat somebody I have a resentment with poorly then? We see them as if they're spiritually sick people. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, and this is a 4-step prayer. This is going to be highlighted pink, okay? And it's going to be underlined as well. It says, God, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? Save me from being angry, thy will be done. You know, this is the prayer that we're using for these people that we're having these issues with. You know, and some of us have more resentments than others. Some people it takes longer to do 4 steps than others. But believe me when I tell you, I remember having 2 really huge doses of just God consciousness. You know, the spirituality really hit me. I just really felt lifted up. And one of them came in step 4, and the other one came in the amends process in step 9. So I cannot express to you guys out there just how important it is to go after this and do it well. Okay, use this prayer. It will save you when you want to hit somebody over the head with a bottle. Believe me. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick people that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. The word helpful is underlined. We're here to be of help to other people. We can't be helpful to other people if we're acting out in violence over how they act. I mean, look at some of the damage that we've done in our lives and how we were treated. You know, we cannot be helpful to all people, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. You know, kindliness, patience, tolerance, love. These are the spiritual principles that are embodied in these steps that we're trying to practice to the best of our abilities, day in and day out. The next paragraph, these are more actions. Actions. Referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done, we resolutely looked at our own mistakes. We're not looking at what they did. We're looking at you. We're looking at your canvas. We want to find out your issues. Forget what they did. They're just the people we have the resentment with, okay? Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and were willing to set these matters straight. That's all actions. That's all. I mean, the book is clear. I mean, it's just the steps you take, okay? It's like amazes me, like what part are we not missing as a fellowship, as a program today? It tells you exactly what to do. Do this, do this, do this. It's right there in black and white. Notice that the word fear, and I'm going to highlight that word orange. Everything is rooted in self-centered and self-seeking fear. Is bracketed alongside the difficulties with Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, the employer, and the wife. A little bit of the examples that they had on the previous 2 pages ago. This short word somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. It set in motion trains of circumstances which brought us misfortune, and misfortune we felt we didn't deserve. But did not we, ourselves, set the ball rolling? Sometimes we think fear ought to be classed with stealing. It seems to cause more trouble, and I would tend to agree. More 4th step actions, 2nd and 3rd actions of the 4th step. This is going to be highlighted green. We reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them, okay? See the digging that we're doing? We're here, we're drilling. A lot of this stuff is like repressed stuff that's like right here, you know, in our core, in our chi. And we're like almost like drilling for oil, you know, and every now and then something will pop up, a little, you know, and then sometimes we'll drill hard and we'll go in with God's help, and then more will be resilient. It'll all come up. We're trying to rid ourselves of this stuff. We're trying to reprogram ourselves here. We're going in to fix ourselves. We're not looking for some pill or some substance to fix what's wrong with us. This is an inside job. It says, wasn't it because self-reliance failed us? The word self-reliance are underlined. Selfish, self-centered, left to our own devices. We know we can't do this on our own. Self-reliance was good as far as it went, but it didn't go far enough. Some of us once had great self-confidence, but it didn't fully solve the fear problem or any other. When it made us cocky, it was worse. And boy, that's who I was. Ego big as the sky, thinking I was the man, you know. But the bottom line is my self-reliance. It couldn't stop me from acting out and doing the things that I didn't want to do prior to getting to the rooms, and once I was in the rooms, struggling with other things. These are going to be some promises. This whole paragraph. Okay, this stuff's going to be all highlighted yellow. This is that happy, joyous, and free stuff that I like to talk about. Perhaps there is a better way. We think so, for we are now on a different basis, the basis of trusting and relying upon God. Trusting, relying, and God are all underlined. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves, so we're no longer in that self-reliance. Remember that power greater than ourselves that we came to understand? This is what we're talking about here. We've now turned it over in step 3, and we're running with it now, okay? We are in the world to play the role that He assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think He would have us. That 3rd step prayer, you know, that's what we're talking about right there. And humbly rely on Him. Does He enable us to match calamity with serenity? These are things that are promised that will happen to you if they have not happened already as the result of doing this work. Continuing on yellow, it says, we never, the word never is circled. I love this part. We never apologize to anyone for depending on our Creator. No way. No way. We can laugh at those who think spirituality is the way of weakness. Paradoxically, it is the way of the strength. The verdict of the ages is that faith means courage. Faith means courage is underlined. All men of faith have courage. Look at the courage that it takes you right now, the viewer out there, to even sit here and listen to this and be willing to do that. I mean, it's courage. It's so courageous to do this, you know. They trust their God. I trust my God with everything. Absolutely. We never apologize for God. The word never is circled. Instead, we let Him demonstrate through us what He can do, you know, and that's, you know, that bearing witness again. You know, that's me here doing this, you know. God is showing you right now that, you know, the miracle can happen for you too. You know, it's 9 o'clock at night. There's a million different things I could be doing on my day off, you know, but this is where God wants me. Believe me when I tell you. And I'm, you know, some people might think me a fanatic, but I'm not. I'm just passionate about something that finally I found that works, you know, and there's just no keeping this secret to myself. I got to share it. So that's all the promises. That's all highlighted yellow. The next sentence, highlighted pink and underlined. It says, We ask him to remove our fear and direct our attention to what he would have us be. That's that 4-step fear prayer. So, when we're afraid, that's what we need to be saying. And while this is all part of the resentment process, the filling out and finding out, the fact-finding inventory, this is where these prayers, man, 3rd step, 4th step's got tons of prayers. 6-step, 7-step prayer, we're going to start using these specific prayers. There's I went up for the spiritually sick man prayer, the sick man prayer, when we're afraid, when we're in doubt. Look, you wouldn't use a flathead screwdriver for a Phillips head screw. You'd use a specific, screwdriver for that specific bolt. It's the same thing here. While the Serenity Prayer is great, and the 3rd step prayer is a Swiss Army knife of all prayers in my estimation, and of course, there's nothing better than always just having that relationship with your higher power, talking to him. There's specific prayers that when you use, boy, that's getting all the juice out of the orange. You understand? It goes on to say right after highlighting orange, at once, immediately, okay, those words are circled. At once, we commence to outgrow fear. Use that prayer. When you're in doubt, there's a when in doubt prayer. There's specific prayers for specific things, and we are definitely moving into the realm of using these prayers. Now about sex. Again, there's sex in this book. There's relationship stuff in this book. This book talks about so many other things besides alcohol that sometimes I think it's almost inconceivable to think that that's why the book was written. Okay, so we're going to talk about sex here. Many of us needed an overhauling there, but above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It's so easy to get way off track. Here, we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think that most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. I think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow a man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet, this living in absolutes. Okay? We want to stay out of this controversy. We don't want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. But what can we do about them? Sometimes I wonder why Bill decided to, really put this specific section in the 4th step. But the truth of the matter is that, he struggled with sex. That's really the bottom line. And I think so many of us do, and choose to kind of treat it as taboo. I know for me, when the obsession to drink and drug was arrested, I started acting out in different ways. That became my new drug of choice, and that stuff almost took me out. I'm grateful today that I don't have those issues anymore as the result of being recovered and doing this work and continuing to live the steps. Just another example of, sure, it's about alcoholism, but if you struggle with sex, or you struggle with drugs, or you struggle with gambling, the end result, the end game is going to be the same. You will be recovered from that by working these steps to the best of your ability, following the clear-cut directions. It works. More 4-step actions. There's a lot of actions in the 4-step. There's a lot of work. You're not just going to sit there and highlight anymore. You're going to be doing some work, guys. We reviewed our conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? Where were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down on paper and looked at it. In this way, all of that is highlighted green, okay? In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for a future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? Another 4-step prayer. This is going to be highlighted pink. It says, we ask God to mold our deals and to help us live up to them. And why are we doing that? Because we've tried this stuff already on our own, and we've gotten nowhere. Whether it's to stop acting out sexually, stop drinking alcohol, stop shooting dope, or whatever it is, stop betting on the ponies. We need God. We had to have God's help. Okay, this all goes back to POIVIP. Lack of power was our dilemma. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. Next sentence, highlighted orange. It says, we remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good. neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. Must, willing, grow. Circled. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about the still more harm in doing. Must and willing circled again. And now we're starting to sprinkle in a little ninth step stuff, even though we're nowhere near there yet. It's just kind of dropping that in there about some of the things that we're going to need to do. A little foreshadowing, 4 through 9, just one big step. Okay? 4 is the bread, 9's the bread, 5, 6, 7, and 8. That's a sandwich, a lettuce, a tomato, whatever you want to throw it. That's all of it. It really, the work is, that core of work is right there, okay? So that's what's coming as far as the amends process, but let's keep it right now in the resentment process, okay? In other words, and this is underlined, we treat sex as we would any other problem. Now, this is one of the few places in the big work where I'm a little confused, because if we treat sex as if it's any other problem, why is it that we give it its own category, its own column? Why do we give it its own page almost? You know what I mean? Why is it on page 69? It's like, it's like, what was Bill thinking, or, whoever contributed to this part of the book thinking, because, gambling, stealing, manipulation, I struggled with a lot of these other things too, and I'm sure a lot of our forefathers had other issues besides alcohol. And if we treat sex like any other problem, why is it giving it that much attention? It's very interesting. But in any case, there's several different ways to do a 4-step format. I'll show you next week how I've done mine. I omitted sex in mine, but if you struggle with sex, it can't hurt you to do it. Believe me, and it'll all make sense in the next submission of Trudge. In meditation, and this is going to be highlighted pink, okay, more prayer. We ask God what we should do about each specific matter. Everything is God. We're going to God with all these things, and then we're waiting for that answer, okay? The right answer will come if we want it. If you are really interested in finding out the truth and really wanting to have that answer, and you really humbly abandon yourself to a power greater than yourself, the answers will come if your own house is in order. This is going to be underlined. It says, God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable. Okay, I've done plenty of that. But we let God be the final judge. But we let God be the final judge. I have that underlined. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. We avoid it. So I have that underlined. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice. I'm not going to go to somebody about my sex problems who has sex problems, or talk to somebody about my relationship issues who's been divorced 4 times. And I'm not going to go to a therapist looking to get fixed. Therapy is great, but just like my alcoholism and my drug addiction, I've been placed beyond human aid. I acted out on these things in a manner that no human could fix me, and while they can help me, they can't keep me. I have to take my problems to God. Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on our motives. If we are sorry for what we have done and have the honest desire, there's honest again, to let God is underlined, to let God take us to better things, not our sponsor or not our support group, but God, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink is telling you. Continuing on with those behaviors. That was my story. That's where I was headed. We are sure to drink. Without a spiritual awakening, without living these steps, a drink is imminent. A drug, it's happening again. Believe me when I tell you. We are not theorizing. These are the facts of our experience. Facts are circled, and look at the experience of people in your area and people going to your meetings. They're in or out, or people who have gone out who've had time. Ask them what happened. A lot of them will tell you they stopped going to meetings, but let's look at how were you spiritually fit? I stopped going to meetings is why I relapsed. It alludes to meetings being the solution to alcoholism, and we all know that that's not true. It's just a part of it. Okay. To sum up about sex, okay? This is going to be highlighted pink. We earnestly, and the word earnestly is circled, another buzzword. We earnestly pray, really give ourselves to this prayer for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity and for strength to do the right thing. Boy, I did all this. I needed this. Infidelity was a big part of my story. I'm not proud of it, but I'm grateful that I'm okay with it today, enough to share it with people out there who are probably struggling in the same capacity. For me, there's no shame. It's who I was, and I don't have to live that way anymore. I just don't. I'm in a wonderful relationship today. It's only by God's grace that I've learned how to be a great boyfriend, and I'm going to be a great husband too. I know, because that's what God's will for me is. God's will for me is not to sleep around. You know what I mean? To not act out sexually. The same components of my program that God wouldn't want me to do with the things that brought me here, drugs and alcohol, they go for all my affairs. The 12-step tells me so, okay? I did this, and this was very helpful. This is going to be highlighted green. It says, if sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves harder into helping others. We think of their needs and what works for them. And not just sex, man. If gambling, if something is really just like, you're obsessing about it to death. Food is a big one I see people struggle with. Throw yourself harder into helping others. What did our forefathers do, man? They were out there finding other people to help. This works. Really give this a good old college try, and believe me, you might be, really excited with the outcome. It says this takes us out of ourselves. It quiets an imperious rage when to yield would mean heartache. This is going to be highlighted yellow. It's going to almost finish out the chapter. It says, if we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. We have listed and analyzed our resentment. We have finally begun to comprehend their futility and their fatality. Let's go ahead and circle the word fatality and futility. We have commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. These things are infinitely grave, guys. We got to be rid of them. We have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill towards all men, even our enemies, for we look at them as sick people. Okay? We have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. This is promised to you if you do this work. These are the things that are going to happen to you. This is kind of like promise/action, okay? In this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. I talk about it week after week. We hope you are convinced. The word convinced is circled. We're not out there trying to convince others. Just be convinced yourself. Now that, and this is going to be underlined, it says God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. Very important. If you have already made a decision and an inventory of your grosser handicaps, you've made a good beginning. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. That's heavy duty. So we're running really long, but I wanted to get through that. Next chapter is chapter 6, into action. We start moving in through step 5, but we're not just going to gloss over this 4-step. Next submission, I'm going to bring my 4-step format inventory to the table, and we're going to go over it from start to finish in depth. I'm going to give you guys a few examples of some of the 4 steps that I did and understand exactly what it is that we're trying to get for you to find here. And then it's up to you to do the work. This is the time where my sponsor stopped talking and started listening. And I stopped listening and highlighted and started talking. We changed hats. And I started to talk to her about my resentments, and this will all be more clear made next week, because you might be wanting to get started and not really know what to do. Obviously, there's one in the book that's very similar. You can go online. There's a million 4 steps. None of them are right or wrong. We want you to find out about you so we can change you, so you can have a life that's better than anything that you've ever dreamed. And I'm not talking something that's predicated on finding a bag of money or having like a rock and roll lifestyle. You're just going to feel good all the time, and it's going to be predicated on God and helping others. And as the byproduct, it's going to be you don't drink, drug, act out sexually, overdo it with anything that causes you pain or anyone else pain. This is what being recovered entails. Recovered alcoholics understand this work. They've done this work. There's only one way to it, and that's through it. And so this is the trudge right here, guys. Steps 4 through 9. This is 4 that I'm teaching you about, and we'll show you next week. And then you sit down with your trusted friend or sponsor and do 5, and then 6 and 7 go hand in hand. 8 and 9 go hand in hand, and then before you know it, we're going to be done with this program. All right, and so That's a heavy duty chapter, how it works. Again, I can't express how important it is to go over the work continually, to live it, look for people to help, pray, meditate, ask God for everything. God is everything. By this time, it starts and ends with God. And so, again, thank you for letting me serve. I always feel so good doing this work. I appreciate you guys who watch it. Hopefully it's helping you get to a spiritual awakening. Hopefully some of the wives watching are understanding more what their husbands are doing, if that be the case. And this has just been my experience, and I'm grateful to be allowed to share it in this capacity. God sees fit for me to do this. So until such time, remember to pay attention. Growth opportunities are everywhere. To pay it forward. Giving it back, altruism is what this program is based on. I heard a guy with a lot of time last night say in a meeting that this is a selfish program, and that couldn't be anything further from the truth. This is not a selfish program. This is a help others program. And to rely on God and not on others. If you're anything like me, you've been placed in position and you are beyond human aid with these problems. Relying on another human being is not going to be the answer. You can always check in or ask another human being for help or advice, but I certainly suggest this after you get right with your creator about it. And so that's all, guys. Thanks again. I'm wiped out. Time for bed. Until next week, namaste.